Phil Jackson was the coach of the Chicago Bulls during the Michael Jordan era, that dynasty back when I was a kid. But before that, in the 70s, he played for the New York Knicks. And one year they won the NBA championship. So he had reached that ultimate goal, the dream that he had been striving after since he was a kid. A short time after, he was in New York celebrating with family and friends, and they were out at this fancy restaurant full of all these famous people. And he writes that during that time, he thought back to the intense feeling of connection that he had with his teammates. And even though it was just a short time before, it just felt like a distant memory for him. And he said rather than being overwhelmed with joy, he was empty and confused. And he kept asking himself, what, is this it? Is this what's supposed to bring me happiness? And he was thinking there had to be something else. And eventually he figured out, and he wrote, what I was missing was spiritual direction. This week, too, I was reading on, I forget where, so the details are a lot more vague, about someone who won the Super Bowl. I can't remember if it was a player or a coach. And so the day after winning the Super Bowl, he woke up, and it just felt like another day. We have all these great moments that can happen to us, accomplishments in our life. It's winning a championship. Maybe it's getting straight A's. Maybe it's getting that promotion. Maybe it's getting some award or some distinction. And all those things, of course, are great. They're amazing. They're gifts from God. But do they really, fit that deepest part within us? It's been said that at the very depths of our being, there's this God-shaped hole, a spot that only God can fit, and to bring us that happiness that we're looking for. I tend to have a problem with the word happy. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I'm hung up on a lot of stuff. But I think there's a lot of, baggage with that word or whatever, however you want to say it. So when people ask me if I'm happy, in life, I actually bristle at that question. What does that mean? Of course, we're all made to desire happiness, and we do, because God made us in order to desire happiness and to be happy. But what does that look like in the end? What does that mean for us? So I think it goes back to what Phil Jackson wrote, that what he was missing was that spiritual direction. And in our gospel, Jesus gives us that direction, that blueprint, that plan or that program in the Beatitudes. That word beatitude, we heard it translated blessed, but it can also mean happy or lucky or fortunate. And so what is it that Jesus, the author of life, is telling us is going to make us blessed, happy, fortunate? It says to be poor in spirit. Just to say, to know that we're just dependent on God for everything. And when we're poor in spirit, we're fortunate, we're blessed, because we're not hung up on stuff. It says, blessed, happy are those who mourn, which sounds kind of weird. But whenever we grieve anything, whether it's a loss, whether it's just evils in the world, or any kind of heartbreak that we experience, the Lord says that we will be comforted. So blessed are the meek. We're happy when we're lowly and humble. That we're fortunate because we're then not sort of hung up or interested in power or resentment or retaliation or any of those things that we can get tempted to get caught up in. He said we're happy when we hunger and thirst for righteousness, for a right relationship with God and others, when we're hungering and thirsting for holiness. Not just, that would be nice, but hungering and thirsting for it. He said when we're hungering and thirsting for that relationship with God and a right relationship with others, then we'll be satisfied. He said, blessed are the merciful, when we put charity into action, when we're compassionate. He said we're happy when we're clean of heart, which is to say single-hearted, especially in our orientation with God. He said we're happy when we're peacemakers, We're trying to bring others into this harmony that God desires, and participating in the Lord's mission of just gathering everyone to himself. And he says we're happy when we're persecuted for the sake of righteousness. We all know it can be hard to be a Christian out in the world sometimes. But when we're striving after holiness and we're single-hearted in that, then he says we're fortunate because we're not caught up in the approval of others. I love our first reading where Zephaniah, the prophet, says, seek the Lord. Seek the Lord. And then with that, seek humility, seek justice, and then we'll be blessed with all that God wants to bless us with, the things that only God can bless us with. Because sometimes we have other messages that tell us to seek after happiness with other things. St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest minds like ever, the 13th century Dominican scholar, his feast day was yesterday. He identified 4 things that we're tempted to go after instead. And that's possessions, power, pleasure, and honor. Of course, what does Jesus say? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who aren't hung up on just getting good feelings. Blessed are those who put power aside. So the Beatitudes just sort of turn this worldly wisdom on its head. And this is that wisdom that comes from God. And when we enter into the life of the Beatitudes, then we can be clean of heart and peacemakers and merciful and righteous. St. Paul tells the Corinthians that God chooses those who are weak and lowly in the world because they're the ones that just are really open to God moving in their life because they know that we got nothing else. And then when that happens, we get that sanctification and the righteousness and the salvation and the happiness that we're looking for. That contentment that comes despite all of our circumstances. I think when people ask me if I'm happy, I don't like to say yes, because does that yes mean everything's just going good for me? Or I'm just sort of getting things the way that what I want? Or I'm just having a good time? Or I'm comfortable and I'm without any challenges in my life? I'd rather be able to say yes because I'm living the life of the Beatitudes. But of course, in my weakness, or as I like to say, in my dumbness, I don't always go after that like I should. All these Beatitudes, they're challenging. They're difficult. They take something beyond ourselves in order to live them out. They take the grace of God, which of course is there for us in abundance. Especially we know that here in the Mass that the Lord is with us in a particular way, offering us a holy communion with him. That holy communion with the Lord through which we live the very life of Jesus. And it is that it's the greatness, the abundance, the happiness that we're seeking after, and that truly you and I were made for.